Welcome everyone to the Maryland Business Rebooted webinar. The Maryland Rebooted program was created by the Smith School of Business faculty members at the University of Maryland, Michelle Weddle, Judy Frells, and Chris Thompson, with really the goal of helping Maryland business owners navigate the impact of COVID-19. My name is Nicole Kim, and along with Michelle Weddle today, we'll make sure that things run smoothly behind the scenes today. And today we have a very, very special panel of amazing restaurateurs in the area. And as you can see here, you can all see the faces. So we have 5 different owners and founders of fantastic restaurants in the DMV area here with us today. And I'm sure we're all very interested to hear from them about how they're coping with the changes and the challenges that COVID-19 has brought upon us, especially for the restaurants and bar industry. And today's webinar will be moderated by our very own Smith School marketing faculty, Judy Frells, who started our Business Rebooted initiative in the first place. And we also have a very special guest moderator, Tim Carmen, who is an award-winning food writer and columnist for the Washington Post. They will both moderate our exciting discussion with the restaurant panelists today. And with that, please, Judy and Tim, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Nicole. The first thing I want to do is welcome everyone and thank our panelists who I'm going to introduce now. Maybe you guys give a wave when I give you a little introduction here. It's going to be brief. Eric Wong is the co-founder and partner of Thummy in Washington, D.C. Josh Phillips is the general manager and Miss Galliera at Espita and Ghost Burger in Washington, D.C. and has something new on the horizon. Peter Opar is the chef and co-owner at Open Crumb in Washington. Janet Yu is the owner at Hollywood East in Wheaton, Maryland. And Jackie Greenbaum is the co-owner of Quarry House, Little Coco's, and Bar Charlie. The latter 2 in Washington, the first one in Silver Spring. Welcome, everyone. Again, very much appreciate you being here. And let me turn it over to my co-host, Tim, to kind of set the context and kick us off.
Great. Thank you, Judy. And thank you to the restaurateurs, the chefs, for participating. I mean, we're very grateful. I know everyone is extremely busy, especially Peter today, whose face may drop out today because he's also multitasking by cooking in the kitchen. So really appreciate that. I think the first thing we wanted to start off with was to get a sense of before and after. Like, how were your businesses before the pandemic, and then how quickly did they get affected afterwards? And we asked this question because, I mean, I think restaurants have been impacted by the pandemic in very unique ways. More unique than I think other industries. You not only have been subject to the sort of government, guidance that varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but you've also been affected by consumer confidence and by, studies that have probably surprised you at any time of day to say that, restaurants are not safe under any circumstances. And these things all have impacts that are sort of unique to restaurants, which, of course, unlike going to like your Target or your CVS, you typically stay there for an hour or so. So those are conditions in which people tend to be more nervous about being in restaurants these days than doing a quick in and out at your local CVS. So I wanted to get a sense, like, and let's start with Jackie, because you have like a number of restaurants. Like, how were you doing pre-pandemic? And then how quickly did you feel the effects of, what would eventually become a nearly year-long struggle with COVID-19?
Well, my places were doing pretty well. They were all, I have 4 places and they were on their own trajectory a little bit. So the Quarry House in Silver Spring was recovering from having been closed for 3 years due to a fire. So it was rebuilding its customer base. So was the case with the Quarry House, but still super strong. El Chucho was doing great. sort of really hit its stride and was on a sort of growth trajectory that was amazing, you know. And Little Coco's also had found was doing really well. So that's how they were doing. The impact was immediate. Of course, we were closed down and decimated right away. Now, in each case, we handled it a little bit differently. A couple of the places we pivoted really quickly to groceries, which was what a pain that was, and what a learning curve it was. Managing it was just epic. It was ridiculous. But we did do it, and it did keep some money flowing in. It was, you know, it was all about keeping our staff employed, and to some degree, a large degree, still is. I mean, the picture now is surviving until the restrictions are lifted, so that we still have businesses. But it's very much centered still, you know, about keeping our employees employed. So that's how it was for us. Each restaurant was a little bit affected differently depending on what kind of carry out identity they had and how strong that was. So that made a difference for how each sort of recovered in the first period.
And like Eric, your restaurant was much younger in its lifespan. I'm curious, like, you know, and you had, I would say, some advantages maybe going into it, that you were getting a lot of buzz, certainly from critics and the dining public. Did you immediately feel the impact as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, when the COVID restrictions went in, we were only 10 months old. And at that point, we had already garnered a lot of positive reviews from Thrillist, Eater DC, Wapo, Washingtonian, all the big ones in the DC area. And in February, we had actually just turned our first profitable month. And then March 16th, we actually had to shut down. And our immediate action was that we laid off everyone, including the owners, to make sure that we stopped the bleeding. So for us, even though we went into it with a lot of critical acclaim, we really didn't get to take advantage of that too much, because we did not, you know, we opted not to reopen until we felt it was safe. And when we were reopening, which was only about 3 or 4 months ago, you know, we're only doing delivery and carry out. So, you know, if anything, I would say we were able to raise our voice and use our platform to sort of do some advocacy while we were not open. But, you know, from a business perspective, we did not really see any sort of advantage from our, you know, public press and all that stuff.
And like Peter, like I know you and your family had moved your restaurant, actually, you know, not even really moved it, but moved the business and then reimagined it in Anacostia. Where were you at and your family at as a business early on during the pandemic, and where are you at now?
So the interesting about our business is a lot of it was mainly focused around our food manufacturing side. For a long period of time, we were working with Whole Foods and supplying their hot bar. And that was bringing a large amount of revenue to us. The front end of our business was we were allowing to grow over time as the Whole Foods side of our business pretty much brought in a majority of the income and kept down the overhead. And once the pandemic hit, we lost 70% of our revenue overnight because a lot of it was centered around supplying Whole Foods with their hot food products. So we really had to switch gears really quickly. And it also didn't help in which a lot of our front door business was centered around the lunchtime office workers or morning time breakfast. And since no one was going to work anymore because everyone's working from home, that completely dried up. So we were left with like 10% of our revenue within 3 weeks of the pandemic hitting. So for a couple of weeks, we reduced our hours of operation. We certainly got rid of breakfast, which we still haven't brought back. But we started focusing on things which we can bring in more revenue and partnering with different entities around the region, such as World Central Kitchen. Also, we are starting a food prep line also to fight back the lost revenue from the Whole Foods side. So we're just thinking about new products to bring in at the moment, and we're getting ready to launch that line hopefully soon, thankfully.
And it may have been obvious, but just for those who may not shop at Whole Foods shut down its hot bars for a long time, so that impacted the revenues of a lot of people who were supplying dishes for their hot bars, including Open Crumb. Janet, at Hollywood East, how were you doing before, and how are you faring now?
Well, we are down, I would say 60% of what we used to do. We have a fairly large dining room, and we also do dim sum and dim sum on the carts and carry out. But I've been open for 25 years. So having to close down the dining room and only do carry out, I mean, at least we had a good carry out following, but we're inside a mall, the mall closed. We had our outdoor entrance. We were doing pretty well in the beginning with just carry out. And we also did like some Uber Eats and things like that. But then we found out that their share that they were taking was so much that we basically had to cut that off in order to make our ends meet. And in the beginning, in March, we were doing fine. And then I guess 2-3 weeks after that, people were coming in and placing their order. Well, my husband got sick, and in 5 days, he passed away. So that left me sort of lost as to what we do next. So what happened was we had to shut down, and we shut down for like a month. And my sons helped me redo everything where we could reopen and reopen safely. And we reopened the carryout. Now, the main problem we had was calling back the staff that we had before, because in the height of the pandemic, no one was safe coming back to work. So we got a few employees, but the key employees, like all the chefs, they really did not want to come back to work because they did not feel safe, especially when, I guess my family had a death and basically COVID. And it was sort of like, I mean, I would be scared. I was scared to open. And that's why I'm afraid to reopen the dining room right now until everything is completely open at 100%, just to protect the staff and ourselves. But we managed to get some friends in, and I have 2 sons that do cook, and just mainly the family and the staff that could come in. We've been able to operate for like almost a year now. And I think we're doing a really great job. Just doing what we're doing, limited hours. One day is a prep day, and the next day everyone has off, and we're only open to the public like 2 full days and 3 half days. So that keeps us going. The main part is trying to make ends meet. So you sort of have to revamp your menu to make things that are more cost effective for you. And you're buying a lot of carry out boxes, and that costs money as well. So just to try to redo your whole way of doing business has been hard for us. But 60% down, at least we still have 40. The loans, the PPP, those things really helped a lot. So hopefully we'll get some more coming soon, and we can stay open, a little bit longer.
No,
Janet?
Go ahead, Tim.
I just wanted to say we're very sorry about the loss of your husband. It certainly puts a perspective on the whole pandemic and not just the loss of restaurant revenue.
Right.
Yeah,
It's losing a partner you've had for 25 years in what you do.
Right. Certainly makes it a lot
So-
more real.
Mhm, right.
Josh, I was going to ask you a little bit about Ghost Burger. Was that something that you had kind of in the works before this hit? Were you thinking or dreaming about that, or was that a pure reaction to what was going on?
That was pure reaction. I mean, I'm pretty obsessed with Mexican food, and drinks and mezcal and all those things. You know, we're actually, when the pandemic hit, we were just finishing fundraising for 2 new Mexican restaurants, which I'm now sitting in. That was a different story. Fundraising during pandemic is not fun. Pre-pandemic, that January and February last year, we were having our best months that we've ever had. We were up 19% year on year. The convention center was having a great year, which was really helping us out too. You know, we really kind of hit our stride as operators, and you know, life was looking really, really quite good. So we were down this road. We signed leases on 2 new restaurants. We did all that good stuff. We spent a bunch of money on design, and then hit the brakes on literally everything. March 17th, you know, everybody goes into work and there's nobody there. We went from having our best months ever to, I think it was 12% of prior year's revenue, pretty much immediately.
Wow.
And then instead of opening the 2 new restaurants this year, it feels like we've opened about 9 restaurants this year. Like every other operator on here, you know, every time we pivot, you know, that's the same as, you know, opening a new concept. You know, it's how do you reinvent yourself constantly? You know, we did the grocery thing. We revamped our entire menu to bring our price point down. We, you know, streamlined our menu to do back on premise again. And then come August, we're sitting there, I like to think several months in advance. We all kind of assumed the dining rooms would close, you know, and then we assumed that come January it was going to be freezing. And we're lucky enough to have a really glorious patio, but you know, I wasn't sure that people were going to want to sit out there. Weirdly, they do, which I'm thankful of.
Yeah, yeah.
But we never thought that people would want to sit outside in January with no enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to think of how we can start a new brand and grow it in time for when the cold weather hit and the indoor dining did go away, that we would be able to protect our business. So it had to be something we could operate while we operated Aspita. We had trimmed down the menu at that point, so we're down to, we had a station that was free and it was on the hot side of the line. And we're like, you know, what can we do with 1 station in front of a griddle and, you know, 6 burner range? What can we make? And we're all from Philly, you know, or have lived in Philly for a significant chunk of our lives. So we're like, our chef Rob, he's obsessed with burgers. Me and Ben, we're obsessed with sandwiches. You know, so we're like, let's do burgers and cheesesteaks. You know, and then I told my wife, who's, you know, basically vegan, and she was like, we're not doing that. So obviously against everything she's for. Ghost Burger was soup nuts. I think it took us maybe 3 weeks to go from an idea and conversation to launch. Cost us about $2,000 to open.
Wow.
And our initial goal was, you know, if we can do $5,000 a week, it's sustainable. If we can do $8,000 a week, you know, that can protect us from laying off some staff, you know, and we can start putting some, because that would be $8,000 a week in addition to what we're currently doing. You know, maybe make some of that and go into the winter months with like an attitude where we can lose some money and still not have to lay some people off. And then week 1, instead of $8,000, we did like about 26,000.
Wow.
And at this point, if you just look at the delivery portion of Ghost Burger, last week Ghost Burger did 37,000 in delivery alone. It's outpacing Aspita at this point, mainly because like it's so takeaway friendly. And we allow Ghost Burger sales alongside of our Aspita menu. So in our 10 tables, you can order tacos and cheesesteaks, no big deal. That's a very popular thing. So it's killing it. It's been successful enough that it's been able to allow us to bring back 31 of our employees, which is great. And that's also enough people to bring back that I was able to several months ago peel off and focus on this new project. So I'm actually rarely at the restaurant. I'm there 1 or 2 days a week now, as opposed to, 18 hours a day like early in the pandemic.
So what do you think will happen when, let's presume a year from now, I hate to be pessimistic, but let's say a year from now, we're back to normal. What's going to happen to Ghost Burger?
Well, let's see.
TBD, huh?
You let me close Ghost Burger at a speed. No, honestly, I think if I were to stop doing Ghost Burger at a speed, I would just, fight like, hordes with pitchforks at this point. We are planning on opening a Ghost Burger. Actually, we've got some pretty big plans for the brand. We are planning on doing Ghost Burger and Pizza side by side forever going
Okay.
forward. Just because, it's become part of the neighborhood. It's become part of the fabric of who we are. It's part of our story. And on top of that, we've got the 2 new Mexican restaurants that we're opening. So that kind of scratches my itch for, authentic Mexican food.
Right, right.
So I think Ghost Burger raises an interesting point about the pandemic and how restaurants are trying to survive it. A lot of chefs and restaurateurs are entering the ghost kitchen game, and it's everywhere. And it's gotten to the point where even major chains now are getting into ghost kitchens or virtual kitchens or pop-ups, whatever version that they're going after. Like I was just having a conversation with Robert Earl of Earl Enterprises, the guy that owns Planet Hollywood, Bertucci's, Buca di Beppo. He started this whole virtual dining concept where he is installing like virtual kitchens in independent restaurants to try to get them to bring revenue in for them to supplement their losses. And he thinks this is a long-term game. It's not just a pandemic sort of band-aid to bring in extra revenue, but it makes me wonder, and I'll throw this out to anyone here, like, is this a legitimate revenue source for everyone now, or are there certain ways to make a ghost kitchen or a virtual kitchen more successful than others? Like Josh, I think you clearly have killed it. So like, what makes yours successful versus somebody else that, may be struggling with theirs?
Yeah, so it's, I think there's 2 different approaches to ghost kitchens. There's a lot of people that I've seen that they look at what they do and what they're good at, and they say, okay, I'm going to do something different, but it's really the same. It's like, I might do nice Italian food and we're going to do cheap Italian food, or I might do nice Italian food and we're going to do nice French food, but they kind of stay in their lane in one shape or form. When we approached it, we kind of looked at what's the least like what we currently do. Our goal initially was to grow the business. It wasn't to give our current guests another avenue to enjoy us. It was to find an entirely new pool of guests. So it's kind of like, we don't do a lot of lunch trade. What can we do that's going to be big at lunch? We don't do a lot of inexpensive trade. What can we do that's going to be, attractive to that price point? We don't do a lot of delivery. What's going to be attractive to a delivery guest? I think when people kind of like look at what they do, they've got to look and evaluate their team and say, what is the team good at, not what does the team do right now? How can we flex our strengths and expand as opposed to just kind of stay in our lane?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of along those lines of, looking at what it is you're doing well. Peter, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about some of the work you did with Jose Andres' organization, and then also this family meal delivery service, if I understand that properly, because those are kind of 2 different unique things.
Yeah, so this project was actually in the works way before COVID actually hit. My mom was actually the one that came. We actually were doing prepackaged food 5 years ago when we worked with Whole Foods. We didn't have the machinery at that point in time to really launch it in the way we wanted to, but we recently were able to actually purchase a really good machine that seals and keeps the food fresh, which has really upped our game in that market. So it's been a learning curve in many ways, and learning how to prepare the food so that when the customer reheats it and eats it on their own, that it tastes as fresh as if I was preparing it for them to their plate. So there's a lot of things that we've had to test out in the time span, and there's a lot of things that we had to learn in terms of marketing that product to people that weren't necessarily in our area or didn't really know our brand. It essentially was a new brand that we were launching, and we've had help from LEDC, if anyone knows who they are. It's a wonderful organization that helps minority businesses such as mine. They brought in marketing help for me. So right now I'm working with someone. Just last week, we were able to take really amazing photos of all the food that we made. So
Say
it's
the name
been
of the organization again, because some of our guests might be interested in that.
LEDC, Latin America Development Corporation. They're
Okay.
amazing. They provided with marketing help. They helped us with the PPP loan. We've had a relationship with them since my parents owned our first business, Ghana Cafe, 10 years ago. So it's been an ongoing relationship we've had with them, and it's just continued in such an amazing way.
Nice.
So with that, and it's great because my mom has taught is really good with manufacturing food and understands the process to make sure everything's fresh, cooling, and just all the specifics that you need, because manufacturing food on that scale is a little bit, it's quite different from a regular carry out or sit down dining experience. There's just a few things you really need to understand to make sure not only the food is safely packaged, but it's packaged in a way that, again, the customer enjoys it at the end of the day. So and it's really amazing on my end, since I'm able to play around with recipes, which I'm not usually doing every day. And in many ways, I enjoy it a little bit more because the process is a little bit slower. So a normal restaurant experience, most people know the kitchen can get quite hectic. You're able to slow down a little bit when you're manufacturing food because you know what you're going to get ahead of time, and you're able to set some boundaries in place, which unfortunately in the restaurant industry, people like to push those boundaries when it comes to food. So we're able to really play around with things and take our time with it, which has been amazing. And going back to Chef Andres' Central Kitchen, the one thing I appreciate about that is my business is in a community which is underserved. So it allowed us to actually prepare food which was given to people that needed it in my own community, and bring in a new revenue stream to allow us to take care of a lot of our overhead. So it's a win-win on both sides, and the relationship is still ongoing and it's still amazing. We are able to actually talk to the people who are handing out the food and see the need on the street, and it keeps us going in many ways because it really makes you realize what you have already and be appreciative of that and a little bit more. So I instead of making me pessimistic in many ways, it brought a level of optimism that I probably would have had a month. I thought I probably would have had a little while ago. So it's been a great all around.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I have to go prepare an order, unfortunately. So I'm gonna
Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
So maybe we should talk a little about government assistance. I mean, there is some targeted relief that could be coming down the pipeline with the current relief bill in Congress. There looks like there might be a 25 billion fund for independent restaurants. And that seems to be a green light for that. But for nearly a year now, restaurants, small business owners have had to rely on the Paycheck Protection Program to try to at least cover, their payroll costs. And I think there has been a lot of frustration from restaurateurs about this program, on what it can cover, the difficulty even getting a loan if you didn't have the right bank at the beginning. But I had a good long conversation with Jackie a few weeks back about how she was using the PPP, and I found it really really helpful in looking at one owner's approach to using that money and banking that money in a way for future days. And wonder, Jack, if you would talk a little bit about how you approached it.
Sure. Just one preliminary comment, which is I think all of us had expected that the pandemic would be closer to behind us at this point. That is to say that, all of my initial projections with my business partner were how to get through and make it through March 30th or 31st of next year, which is now a month away. The first round of PPP was enough to sort of launch us or give us some resources for last year. And as soon as the cold weather hit, not able to, we aren't doing indoor dining at any of our restaurants either. We're doing carry out, outdoor dining only to the degree it's allowed. And so as soon as the cold weather hit, we were, it was looking pretty bleak for the restaurants that I have that don't do much in the way of carry out. And, I thought next round of PPP will be what we need to be able to get through and see it through, the warm weather. Well, now I'm glad to hear that the restaurant bill is looking good, because it looks like we may not really have full seating until the fall. So my former idea, like, woohoo, second round of PPP, we're good. Well, not quite so sure. As far as how we used it, there was a lot of confusion in the beginning as to whether the PPP funds were supposed to simply be a vehicle to distribute to your employees while you were closed, almost in lieu of unemployment. So, I do know people or restaurateurs that to their essentially furloughed employees. That is not what we did. As soon as we could hire people, we kept a few people employed from the beginning, even when we were closed. And then as we sort of brought in carry out, we brought more people back, and groceries, stuff that we did. And then as soon as we understood more about how the PPP could be used, we reopened at least fully for carry out. And then as soon as we could do on-site dining, outdoor dining, we opened for that at all of the places. Because the benefit of PPP was that you had your payroll costs covered, and therefore you could begin to accumulate some resources, because that was covered, free labor basically, to be able to offset your previous losses and the losses to come. And or to cover the losses that you were enduring if you weren't breaking even with your contracted payroll levels and costs of operation. So the first round of PPP enabled us to get some funds in the bank. We knew that we would need them to be able to make it through, and that worked well for us. But I guess my comment on it is there was an enormous amount of confusion as to what it was meant for and what it could be used for. I'm not just talking about the breakdown as to whether it's 40% or 30% of whatever it was to begin in.
75.
Right, 75 for outside costs as opposed to labor costs. At first it was like, okay, so is this just like we're now unemployment, so we pay our laid off staff with it? It's like it took a little while to come to understand what its value would be, and to get right on it. The ability to extend the covered period for 24 weeks made the whole difference, because suddenly we could open back up with outdoor dining, and this could go to cover payroll. So that made a whole different picture about what it could generate for us as a company, to be able to get through, the significant losses that we were facing. Oh, and I do know restaurants that did not do that stayed closed all last summer and simply dispersed their PPP to their furloughed employees. And the few people that I know that did that have either already closed their restaurants or have understood the impact of what that meant. It did not help them to survive.
Oddly enough, the Assistant Secretary for U.S. Economic Policy at the time that PPP was enacted is a current Smith School finance professor. And so we are going to have a webinar on PPP, and he created the program, so he knows a lot of the nuances, but he fully appreciates that they tried to move fast. And I think in doing so, you know, it was always not, the communication took a while. There was a bit of a communication lag, but I did put a link in the chat for all the guests. If people have a lot of detailed questions about PPP, on March 3rd, we're going to have a webinar about that as well. Did any of the rest of you take advantage of PPP? Have you found it to work, or maybe other programs that helped you kind of stay alive during this time? Eric?
Yeah, so if I may piggyback on what Jackie had said, the first round of PPP, which we received in June, essentially was the starting point for myself and my business partners to start discussing what reopening would look like. Because, you know, if we can get our payroll, you know, covered, that means that we can operate and start serving. So that was when we started looking into, okay, how are we going to reopen? And actually, while we were planning on what the new pivoted model was going to be, that's when we started doing stuff with WCK as well, just what like Peter had talked about. And that really actually helped us, you know, sort of figure out what that social distance service would look like, because it was sort of like a practice service for our kitchen when we were doing the WCK. And once we reopened for delivery and carry out, you know, we started using our PPP, and that, you know, that really helped out. We sort of backed into the model. We looked at how much money we got from PPP and figured out, okay, how many payrolls can we cover with this, and how many months of rent can we cover with this? So we just sort of went, okay, that covers about 6 months or so. So we essentially gave ourselves 6 months to test out the new pivoted model. And, you know, we're still here, still doing the delivery and carry out. So really for us, it definitely worked out really well. You know, I was always under the impression that whoever received PPP was sort of had to open or had to have people working. I never actually considered just paying our employees, but even if that were, you know, an option, I don't think our cooks would have wanted that, because they were already by the end of May, they were dying to get back in the kitchen.
Janet, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, well, we used our PPP basically for employees for payroll. We also were able to get the SBA loan that was very low interest and takes like pay off in 30 years. But that was a good chunk of money, and that's helped keep us alive and going for the past year. So now, you know, it's sort of coming down to you just have to make it each week to make sure you can keep going, because the funds have been exhausted, and it's mostly for run up business operations and payroll, like food costs and your electric bills and things like that, and not even fully paying rent. You can only pay what you can afford to pay at this time. So we're just waiting for the next round that will help us get through a little bit, you know, a few more months,
Right.
and see what happens.
Right.
Not easy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you all how you're executing on the delivery model. I know Janet mentioned earlier that Uber Eats was taking such a large cut that they ended up not going down that path. Are any of you using these DoorDash, Uber Eats services?
Well, the funny thing about my business model, since my community, since where I am, dictates how I operate. I was focused primarily on takeout and delivery from the get-go since I opened my doors.
Mhm.
And the great thing, and DC actually offered a free delivery service for restaurants, which we're about to start signing up for, which is, I think, going to bring down the cost of our delivery dramatically. But honestly, we've just had to eat the loss from Uber Eats and DoorDash and Postmates. It's helped that there have been laws put into place that have reduced the amount they can actually take from each offering, but again, it doesn't really make up for controlling 100% of your revenue all the time. And it's not, and I've seen it's not even the revenue that hurts us, it's the lack of communication with my customers, which is really hurting me the most. Usually I love to talk to my customers and see how everything is, if anything's wrong. If something is wrong, I don't have that ability to fix it. And usually I don't find out till there's a negative review online, which is
Right.
kind of too late at that point.
Interesting point. Eric, you're,
I think to Peter's point, DC put in a cap for the third-party delivery fees, which I think helped a lot of restaurateurs. Some of these third-party delivery companies, they're big public companies based in Silicon Valley, and they're charging 30% because they have huge overheads. And so DC said, you know what, we're going to cap your fees at 15%, but that's just DC. It's like if you're like, and I live in Prince George's County, there is no cap in Prince George's County. So all the restaurateurs here are still paying 20, 25, 30%. And I think, as those in the business can talk about, the difference between 15 and 30 is huge. Even 15% would pretty much basically cut out any profit you would have pre-COVID. So all these changes really affect the business. And Josh, you've got your hand up.
So, I mean, to your point there, like people always talk about like rent is really expensive for restaurants in major cities, right? So most restaurateurs I know shoot for, coming around 8% of your revenue for rent in a downtown, nice area. And then here comes Uber Eats with their 30%.
yeah.
I mean, just to like put that in perspective, like the 30%. Yeah, I mean, we've been happy to be in DC and have the 15%, but even 15% is still like double what we're paying for our rent. And when you shift your business model going from, we used to do maybe $3,000 a week in delivery sales through Caviar and DoorDash back in the day, to now we're doing, $45,000 a week in delivery services, so all of a sudden that's a huge, huge, huge amount of money going out the door compared to, we didn't have to pay anything. We just had to pay rent, and we still have to pay rent.
Yeah.
Janet, did you have something to add?
Yeah, what we just started to try to do was increase our prices to Uber Eats so that we could do some delivery with them. And, you can turn it off and on. If you get busy with your regular customers, you can turn them off. So that's kind of good. But we were having a big problem with one of the companies that were calling in and placing the carryout orders. And then when we fixed the orders and prepared them, they would send somebody in to pay with their credit card. And you know how I have the credit card with the scanner in the front where they put in their card? They didn't have a chip. So we'd have to take the card and manually punch it in. And it turned out that they were a delivery service company that would put our restaurant on their delivery app. They would get the customer's order and come and pay. And if they didn't put the money on the card would decline. So we would have to go through and keep, they had to keep calling the company to make sure they would put that card in so the card could be used. And sometimes they couldn't pick up the order. So we would cook the food, have the order ready, and they couldn't pay for it because their card didn't work. And that's happened a few times. And we figured out what company it was, and we called them and says, would you just please take us off of your list?
Good luck.
I mean, we didn't sign up with them, but they just want to keep getting that business too. And they charge the customers a lot of money.
Well, and it's interesting. I don't know if Montgomery County, where Hollywood East is, has changed that rule, but DC, I think, just passed a law saying you cannot put restaurants on apps without the permission, which has got to be such a relief, because I'm sure all of you have dealt with this. Jackie, you look like you were nodding your head in agreement.
Oh my God, we used to have huge fights with, I guess it was back in the day, it was Postmates and DoorDash, I think it was.
I think that might be it.
Because they would, of course, to expand their own presence and their market, would put menus back from 10 years ago, and people would be ordering things that hadn't been on our menu. I mean, we would know right away. We'd be like, we haven't had those nachos since 2004 or whatever it was. So, but it ends up making you look bad with your customers because they think they're ordering from a legitimate site. And oh my God, I used to have wars and wars and wars with them. It was quite fun actually. But so
for us, Tim, we right now about 40% of our business comes from delivery, and the other 60% is pickup. And we actually encourage our customers to use a service called Skip the Line, which is it's separate from a meal delivery system. It's basically just an errand running service where customers can just go, hey, can you go to Thami and pick up my order at 6:30? And their driver will come and just pick up the order. And that has really worked out. Some of our regular customers choose to do that instead of using the delivery platforms like Uber Eats and Grubhub because they know that we are paying a lot less in fees that way, and they're taking on the cost of getting it delivered rather than us paying the cost of getting it delivered. So that's really been working out well for us, and we've been encouraging a lot of our regulars especially to just use Skip the Line if they don't feel like coming in to pick it up themselves.
You know what's interesting? It's like when you say you have to pay the cost, well, we're still paying the cost too.
Yeah, everybody's paying the cost.
It's like they're getting so much money off this.
Yeah.
I've been ordering off of third-party apps in recent weeks just to see how much it costs, and it's amazing how expensive it is. It's like you can get a couple of sandwiches, a side, and a drink, and you're spending $70. And $8 or $9 is for a delivery fee that you say that you're paying, Eric. So where is all this money going? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to you guys.
No, we don't get to charge, at least for my company, we don't get to charge a delivery fee. The delivery fee is charged by the platform, and the platform takes it. They'll say that, oh, it's for the restaurants, it's for the drivers, it's for neither. It's all for them. And they're also taking 15% of our sales on top of that, right? So there's a lot of just legal dodgeball that they're playing with those fees.
This kind of brings me to a question we got in the chat early on. It's from and I've lost his name now because it's been a moment. Ronald, and Ronald was saying, look, it's a horrible situation. As a consumer, he's really conflicted about going into dining rooms, as Janet was alluding to. And he doesn't know what to do because he really does want to support restaurants. But he says, he says, boy, sometimes I look in a restaurant, it looks like it's more than 50% full. So he's doing takeout as much as he can. But he's doing as much as I can, but actually going, I know, shows more support, but I still feel like I shouldn't. I think a lot of us want to support our local restaurants because we're all dreaming of that day when we can be back in a restaurant with our friends and carrying on and being loud and being a nuisance to the rest of your guests. But what can we do now to really support you guys? What's the best way for some of us, and I know some of the attendees, to help to keep you guys around? Josh?
Order your carry out.
Yeah, takeout. I think takeout's the best possible thing. We've at Aspicto, we've chosen not to reopen our dining room. I think like a lot of the people here, it's terrifying to be a restaurant worker. Guests feel scared to go sit in a dining room for an hour. We're there for 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Chosen not to do that. We've just got our patio and taken on delivery. So I mean, if a guest wants to support a restaurant and not pay fees to these big tech companies, the best possible way is just do takeout. The takeout services, we use a service called GoTab for our online ordering, and that charges like a 1% fee, which the guest pays, and that's fine. I feel like anybody off.
Yeah.
Some of these platforms have like delivery services that pass all on to the guest, and I'm personally not cool with that either. Like we're in the business of trying to provide the best value that we can to our customers. So like all these things that are trying to like artificially inflate the price and kind of like shift the blame and move the money to the guest responsibility. It's my business.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility to be able to provide a product to guests at a competitive price that's a high quality product.
And that system, Josh, that you like is called GoTab?
Yeah, GoTab's been great for us. We use it for contactless dining also on our patio. And that's been really successful too. That's allowed us to A, operate safely, B, most of our servers left the city, so we didn't even have the choice to bring them back. So we've been operating, with a fraction of the front of house staff. And it's just a much safer operating model where we don't need to be on top of tables constantly. But it allows us to have these easy interactions. And even when you do takeaway, we've got a QR code on our door. You just walk up to the door, scan the code, and you can order real quick right on your phone, next to you when your order's ready. And for some people, they don't feel coming in or comfortable coming in, that's fine. They just respond and we'll bring it right out to you.
Nice. Eric, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to what everybody else is saying, definitely order takeout instead of delivery. And if you want to show extra support, definitely also tip as if you were dining in, because all of that is going to the employees. And if you really want to show support to our employees, tip as if you were dining in, because we want you to have a safe experience. We want everybody to be safe. Some folks are open because they have to, but really at the end of the day, if you order takeout more, it just means that less fees are charged from us. And if you tip as you would have done with dine-in, that means that, our employees are not suffering as well.
So I think one thing, one way that restaurants, at least theoretically, looked at trying to survive the pandemic, particularly as it went into the cold weather months, was to try to winterize and, take those summer patios that were sort of thriving for a lot of restaurants and make them usable in the winter. And there were grants for it. I know DC offered grants for winterizing. And I just wondered, it seemed like a good idea, but did it actually work for anybody? And Eric, I know you just spoke, but I'd love to get your thoughts, because we had a conversation where you made a decision early on about streeteries and outdoor dining.
Sure. So, my business partners and I looked at the ideas with streeteries, and right around the time, I think it was around August, is when all these grants were coming out and all that stuff. And we looked at it and we said, okay, it's going to take about a month to put it all together. And then by that time, the weather is going to get cooler, and it's just going to get colder and colder. And we saw that there wasn't a return on investment. Not only that, if we were still limited by dining capacities, there was just no way that we were able to make it work. And now you sort of look around now, and there's a lot of streeteries that are just, they are enclosed spaces. And, when you take an indoor structure outside, surprise, you're still inside, right? Like, you're not eating outside. You're inside in an igloo. If anything, you're in a space where there's less air circulation than you would have inside. So, it just wasn't for us. And for us, we made a very firm decision early on in the pandemic that we would not reopen until there was vaccinations widely available for everyone, and that all of our key staff members could get vaccinated. For us, our executive chef is 67 years old. Right. I think she's going to hate me for telling you guys how old she actually is, but she's 67 years old, and she is arguably the most important person on our team. We cannot, in good conscience, put her health above our revenue. It's just not worth it. We cannot put anybody's health above our revenue. And for us, as a business owner, it's my duty to sort of, take the suffering for that, right? Like, we are going to make it through this, but I don't think putting people's health on the line is the way to go. So,
Jackie, you were raising your hand. Did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, we did participate and are participating in the streeteries, and it has worked for us. Bar Charlie is the best example, in that Bar Charlie did not have any otherwise outdoor space, no patio, no like front sidewalk cafe or anything like that. So, and it did very little in takeout. So the streeteries were a godsend for us. We were lucky enough to be able to get access and get the permission to use the back parking area, which was pretty huge. That was behind our building, and we improved it with the help of the streeteries money. I mean, a lot of it we paid for ourselves, but we put a lot of bluestone gravel down, and because it was a turf or dirt kind of parking area. And I think it was maybe July or maybe August 1st, I ordered all the propane standing heaters from all the Home Depots in the entire area. If you want to know who got them, I got them because they got to me before, and then I couldn't get them. And I mean, I had a lot of them I bought them for all my restaurants. But I do feel that I'm quite comfortable with outdoor dining with a group. I find it, I am comfortable with it. So this was this big outdoor area with picnic tables very far from one another. And it really did help us until it got cold, and we were able to heat it with outdoor heaters. It was a little perplexing to me that DC was offering grants for winterization, but winterization did not allow you to have more than one side of a tent down. I wasn't ever thinking, to your point, Eric, of enclosing it completely, but I did think we would be able to sort of use the wall of the building next door, and then maybe one or two sides down with maybe one full side open and a doorway on the other, and that we could have sort of an indoor-outdoor space. And the fact that wasn't permissible, that more than one wall down was considered indoor space, made it seem useless to me. So we had bought this gigantic, expensive tent, and we thought that we would come up with some sort of compromise. We found a way to duct air in to heat it so that the propane could be outside of it. We went through all of these sort of party planning sort of things, or party tent kind of procedures, only to realize that it was not practical. So we dismantled the tent and went to straight outdoor seating. And if it's warm enough and people want to brave it, we use our standing propane heaters. And if not, we don't do it. But so I completely understand the concern about any version of indoor dining, whether you're turning an outdoor space into an indoor by virtue of enclosing it, or whether you're seating indoors. To the person who commented about not feeling comfortable, I don't either, and I don't blame them. And so we've also made a deliberate decision to not have any indoor dining at our places too, until such time as we're fully reopened.
Janet, you've got a unique situation up at the mall, in Wheaton. You don't even have a patio, so you can't do patio dining. Your outside is basically a parking garage. How you clearly can't do sort of a streetery or patio dining. What kind of ideas have you come up with to supplement your income, without those options?
Well, we do we also have the QR code where you scan and you can order. We have online ordering, but mostly all of our orders are online ordering. And when you come in, you're greeted, you just come in the front door, you're greeted by me on an iPad. I'm the iPad manager, and my picture shows up at the iPad, and you talk to me, and I tell you where your order is. And we have 6 boxes that are operated where I open it in the back where I am. I can see the customer come in, their food is put in the box. They tell me their name. I push a button, that box opens automatically. They pick up their order, and they're right outside the parking lot. So they just go out with their order. I close the box up, and the next one comes and picks it up. So we've continuously operated by putting orders into secure boxes, so that it doesn't get cold and it doesn't get the dirt from the outside, and they're secured in the box, and we just open and close the boxes. Now, I do have a very small patio section, and you were not supposed to open the patio. Actually, right now it can be opened at like 25% on that patio, but we only have like 5 tables there. And we do have a QR code where you can scan and place your order and say you're on the patio. And then you come back to the front door and you pick up your food, and it's all packaged like carry out, and you can sit on our indoor patio, but it's all self-service. You clean up your own table and you do everything yourself. But we find that most people don't want to do that. But I know that there are a few customers that do want it because they say by the time they get home, their food is cold and they prefer to eat it hot. So we do have that option for them to eat on the 5 tables that we have right outside our door, which is indoors. But that's what we're doing now since Montgomery County let you open that area on this past Sunday.
Do you,
But other than that, it's all carry out online ordering.
yeah, at one point, I know you were thinking about doing a Jamaican patty ghost kitchen out of Hollywood East. Is that still on the books?
That's being talked about,
Okay.
and other things are being talked about.
I
Okay.
apologize if I spilled the beans.
Oh yeah, you did spill the beans. But anyway, it's okay. We're thinking of different options. But because Chinese New Year had just passed, we came up with a whole list of Chinese New Year menu items, which will go through the end of February. And some nice small steamed fish, some golden jumbo prawns, XO jumbo shrimp fried rice. We have a lot of specials that are basically for February for Chinese New Year. So we're going to hold off on anything new until after that, while we finish our New Year's. But we have been extremely busy for New Year's, and I'm very thankful for that. So now we're just going to have to see how the next month goes.
So sort of to that point, we got another question that said, are any of you, or have you thought about doing a custom menu for a customer if they were going to order a lot of it? Like someone said, is it too much to ask if I want my local Italian? This is Ronald Estevez, maybe some of you know him. Is it too much to ask if I want my local Italian place to make me a bechamel lasagna or bechamel versus the traditional American version, with the understanding I would buy the whole pan? Have y'all done things like that? Do you know of restaurants doing things like that?
That's actually funny because I have one customer which I do that for all the time. So I do since I am more of like a community restaurant, and I am the chef, it allows me a lot more flexibility on that level. So they will come up to me, say, we're doing a date night, just make us a menu. I'll create something for them and they will pay for it. And that just a continuation of the family meal concept that we're trying to start creating over the next few weeks. So yeah, and I think I actually really enjoy that in many ways, more so than the front service, because that creates a relationship with my customers, which you can't really get in a regular dining experience. And you're able to create meals which really fit their needs and their needs only. And it really does challenge me, because cooking the same thing every day is boring. So this allows me to get out my comfort zone, try new recipes, and it's just better in many ways.
Cool.
Even though I will say it's in many ways a lot more work, since everything's so much more specific, and you still have your daily the daily list of things you have to do. So it just adds to it, but it's worth it in many ways.
Anybody else?
We do specials if someone wants something that's not on the menu. We do say, if you want, say, like a whole chicken, because our chickens are like, they come with head and feet. They're actually fresh chickens. If you want a whole chicken, you give us a day in advance order and we will fix that for you. And normally we do carry like fresh live clams, and we have lobsters. Right now we have Dungeness crab that are live in a tank. So anyone that wants to order those, they can order that, and it's like their nice gourmet meal that they can take home.
Nice.
Janet, I'd like to say you make me want to go to your restaurant right now, by the way.
Totally.
And yes, we've done custom orders as well. Fairly, it's not a super common request, but we've cooked stuff off menu or for special occasions or whatever. We're not nearly as busy as when we have dine-in, so we can make the time, and we love doing it actually.
So I'm wondering, if the Restaurant Act gets passed, which is right now like $125 billion act, which is targeted just for independent restaurants and bars. If that passes and that money is available, like how is it going to change your business? Will you try to alter what you do, maybe do things a little differently than you're doing it now? And Josh, I'd be curious with you because you've got a lot of balls in the air right now.
A large infusion of cash would, I think we've all gotten really good at pivoting and trying to figure out what's what. I think we've all also come to the conclusion that the new normal is there is no new normal. So having a large infusion of cash would give us the flexibility to actually figure out how to be sustainable long term, as opposed to just kind of like, stay sustainable for right now. I mean, we're all looking at what does the future look like, not we know what last year looked like. Last year was a nightmare. So we've been, fortunate enough to be positive for most of the year. But there was still, a million out on compared. I mean, if we were to be able to get that cash in hand, that would allow us to kind of reevaluate what our business model looks like going forward. Things like Ghost Burger, for example, we can actually revamp Aspida to be, better prepared to actually operate Ghost Burger and Aspida side by side, as opposed to the patch meal version of that we're doing right now. I'm sure everybody's kind of looking at ways to change their business.
One thing that, am I on?
Sure.
Oh, I am working on a line of sauces that should be coming out very shortly. Actually, we're getting the labels ready, and I still make cookies, which were my mother's recipe of Chinese almond cookies, but I still make those fresh, but hopefully soon they would be able to be made and sold on the market more widely. But the sauces are coming, some sauces are coming out soon, and I plan on possibly doing a whole line.
How
So we'll
could we
see how
order
that
those,
goes.
Janet? Are they going to be ordered on, can you order those online?
Probably, and through Hollywood East. So we'll see, and maybe cooking classes after that go with the sauces. I'll teach you how to cook the food. So there's
Sign
a
me
whole
up.
lot of things, whole lot of options that if we are able to get some money and to keep ourselves afloat and going, then we have to be a little more creative and not operate the same way that we've operated for 25 years. So we have to sort of change that model now, because I don't know if we'd ever be able to go back to pre-pandemic. Just because of the way things are, how people are working. Yes, they want to come out to eat, but will they? It's going to be a while before everybody gets their vaccines and are comfortable coming out and eating inside a restaurant all the time. So we just have to see what happens as we go along.
Peter, how about you? Your restaurant, I mean, it's mostly a takeout, I would say, but it's really vital to your neighborhood. And the last time we spoke, you were doing a lot of the work yourself. If you had to, you got a grant that was, from the restaurant fund, how would you apply it to your business?
I think it'll probably go directly to our prepackaged food line. I'm looking to the future. I'm not really looking at the present. I've run a bunch of numbers on how much that could grow our business. We've had a lot of feedback. We've tested out a few of the products, and I'm pretty much looking towards that to take us beyond just being a restaurant. And it'll allow us to bring in extra staff, allow us to buy some extra equipment. And depending on how much it is, we are also looking to purchasing our building from our landlord. hopefully next year and a half, which would cut down. Anyone that knows, rent's ridiculous. So it'll cut down on our overhead. It's easier to pay a bank than pay a landlord. Some ways, but some ways. It will allow us the flexibility I think that we need, and to be able to breathe for at least a few weeks. Having that, yeah, so that's having that ability, it will allow us to pivot fully and to go to the next step. It also allow us to cover a lot of the incoming overhead that we were hoping to get back once Whole Foods starts bringing back their hot bar. So it just keeps us going pretty much until we get to that next stage that we want to get to.
So we did get another question kind of going back to, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I know we probably all have a few closing words we want to say. How can, Tricia asked, how are you communicating to customers that carry out order directly from the restaurant as preferable to ordering from third-party delivery apps? And have your customers been receptive to this, or do you think the demand for convenience continues to drive people to delivery apps? Do you have a way that you can let people know how best to get to you guys in a way that benefits you and the customer both?
I think direct communication, Instagram, Facebook, blogs, whatever you use to normally communicate with your customers, you're just gonna pass the same along information. I found that most of my customers are pretty receptive to the idea that it's better for us and them if they do order directly through us. But again, convenience is convenience. There's some people that are always going to take convenience over anything else, really.
For me, most of our customers live pretty close to the restaurants. And so there's been a lot of there's been a lot of reports in the media already about how much the delivery services take out of a restaurant's pocket. So I would say that already, and certainly for the past 6-8 months or so, our restaurants tend to come pick up instead. I mean, our guests, our patrons tend to come pick up instead. They understand that it's better for us to do so. Not that I don't try and tell them to, but
Yeah. I think a lot of people, we are eating at the restaurants we choose because we're like, we don't want this place to go away. And so I think we're all really open to what's the best way to get the money into the hands of the folks that are going to be there a year from now to help us out.
So Jackie, I have a question. Like one of your prime businesses is not open, which is the Quarry House, one of my all-time favorite places to eat. And it's a subterranean pub. Probably a lot of people wouldn't feel safe dining in it. It makes me wonder how you keep that afloat for all these months. I'm sure you still have rent, you have other overhead, you have insurance. Like, how do you cover that and not just say, you know what, it'll be so much easier to surrender this and move on?
right. Well, as you well know, Tim, it'll be over my dead body will the Quarry House ever not live. So, but we're lucky. So it's a twofold sort of answer. One, we're lucky that the Quarry House's fixed costs are low. Our rent's low. We have an amazing landlord who not only really rebuilt the space for us after the fire that we had, but without us asking, has waived a fair amount of rent over the past year. She did last, shout out to Abby Levin, just saying. She, without us asking, waived a couple of months rent at the beginning of the pandemic for everybody in the building.
Wow.
And then just recently waived a couple of months rent without anybody asking. I was about to ask, but during the winter. I mean, she's friggin' awesome. So that's one part of the answer is that our insurance is, you're able to curtail it some when your sales are down, when you're closed, when you don't have employees, that kind of thing. And we did have a fairly steep equipment lease payment for the new equipment that we had taken on, but luckily our last payment, I think, was February of last year. So we can afford to in that regard. Also, we began to look at all of the, the Quarry House is not doesn't have the same ownership as the DC Places do. I've got a different partner there. So this is a little bit challenging books wise, but we began to view the entire pot of all the restaurants and to be able to get us through. So it was sort of like, this is what we need to survive. This one is doing okay. This one is not doing okay. This one's closed. And sort of we've been having that kind of perspective. So basically the entire restaurant group is helping. And then I forget what the other thing I was going to say is, but there you go. That's all I remember right now.
So
There was some other aspect of it.
well, if you think of it, just chime in.
I will.
but-
It is going to be reopening soon for carryout, and we're also doing another concept in there. I'll call you.
Okay. Janet, did you have something?
Yeah, one thing we like everyone to do, of course, is support our Montgomery County restaurants. But we do have a lot of neighborhood pickups. Like one person will organize their neighborhood orders, and one person will come and pick it up for everyone else. So we really appreciate those that do order for their neighborhood. They sometimes have 10, 12 orders, and we get them all ready at a certain time, package each one separately and put the labels on them, and they can bring it back. And they either have one point where everybody comes into the neighborhood and picks up their order. So that's been working very well too with the neighborhood orders.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
The thing I
So-
was going to mention, Tim, is that even though I have the confidence that we'll survive because we can afford to be closed, it is uniquely situated that way. I do have some strong concerns about what it'll be like when we're able to fully reopen. Obviously, it's going to be the last one to reopen for indoor dining. Probably, if it's this year, we'll be thrilled. But I'm not going in the Quarry House in basement space with no windows. I'm not going to ask my staff to. And who would go in there, right? So. But what does concern me is that this will represent now 4 of the last 6 years that the Quarry House has been closed, 3 years for the fire and now
Right.
this year. And that's pretty friggin' hardcore. We have a really loyal customer base, but 6 years over this period of time, that's tough. We were rebuilding anyway. And now, so in that regard, I do have some serious concerns,
So Janet, one of the things, Jackie, one of the things you brought up, I think we haven't really talked about, which is important, like how much your landlords have helped or not helped in, getting you through this. I've talked to a lot of people over the past year, and, it goes everywhere from no relief at all, expect you to pay full rent and CAM charges and everything else, to completely waiving fees. And it just seems to me like, well, it's clear that if you have a sympathetic landlord, you may be able to make it through this. Like, how have your landlords helped you along the way, pro or con?
My landlord directs me to his lawyers, so that gives you the best. I think that spells all. That pretty much says everything.
Well, no wonder you want to buy your place, Peter.
For us, we were very fortunate in that our landlord essentially gave us 2 months free rent, and for the 3rd month, he let us take it out of our deposit, and then we're now sort of slowly building that back up. And we also was able to renegotiate our rent, and we essentially cut it down to half. We were paying close to $10,000 a month because our space is 2 floors and it's actually rather big on H Street. So we renegotiated our rent to be essentially the base, which is what they're paying for their mortgage, plus a very small percentage, about 3.35% is what we're paying. So, we were able to cut down our rent to half, and it's been that way since June.
Shout out to my El Chucho landlords. They've been great. So they waived some rent and then restructured the rent so that it was a lower structure over the course of a year. Abby at Quarry House already mentioned has been incredibly generous. And our rent's relatively low at Little Coco's, and we have not received any type of rent restructuring or forgiveness there. We haven't asked for it. We kind of were waiting and to see if we really needed to, because we like our landlord. It's not, we don't want to ask for it where it isn't necessary. That puts a better spin on it, meaning it sounds like Coco's is like rolling in money. It isn't, but we've been able to make it through. And so, and then at Charlie, we had a landlord that was really, really tough. And even he restructured our rent for us, and then he died. And in the middle of it, and a relative took over who was brutal. So we've had a very rocky road there. It seems to have been worked out in the end, but it was really tough going there for 3 or 4 or 5 months. Looks like it's all right though.
We actually did okay. Our landlord volunteered. We paid full rent through our first PPP round. And then at the end of that, like maybe a month before that, my landlord called me up and he's like, why don't we cut down your rent, your base rent in half? We'll move to a higher percentage rent until you get back up to your regular base rent payment. And then beyond that, it'll go back to your normal percentage rent. So, I mean, in a bad month, our rent is not bad. In a good month, our rent is normal. So, and we didn't ask for anything. He was just,
Nice.
It's a fairly large company too. And it was the CEO of the company who called me personally. It was like, Josh, you've been a good tenant. We want to make sure that you are still a good tenant 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Smart.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because I can't imagine who they think they might get in, although we do have people like Josh who are opening new restaurants. So that is happening. Wrapping up, any final words of advice, exhortations for our attendees who might be looking at going into the restaurant, or any sort of plug you want to give, come see you, anything that we can do, I think, as members of the community to make sure that, you guys get it through this. Any final words? I'll start with you, Peter. Anything we can, you want to share or that you haven't had a chance to share?
I think the one thing I want to share is keep looking out for our family pre-packed meals. We're really excited about launching them in the next few weeks. It's a really amazing endeavor. I'm always changing my menu up, so if anyone wants to stop by, I love to talk and chat as best as we can behind my glass. But yeah, but I think this is for anyone in the industry. I think optimism is our best tool to get through this. Being pessimistic is self-defeating in many ways. So there's a lot of things that we can still do to keep our head above water, if not surf this one out. So just got to take one day at a time, really.
Sounds great. Janet, any final thoughts you want us to leave us with?
Well, just for everybody to support their local small businesses. I mean, we're all struggling one way or another, whether you're a family, a single person, a business owner, or just working from home with a family. So just to try to support your local business so we can at least stay around and support them, give them the places they want to be at.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah. Eric.
Janet.
Yeah, just as Peter and Janet have said, support your local business. Think about what you love about your neighborhood and your city. And chances are there's at least one restaurant that's the reason why you love that neighborhood. And, just keep on supporting that restaurant. And like I said, use carryout as much as possible. And, and if there's any attendees out there that are a student of Maryland business that have more business questions, I'm always happy to answer any questions that is specific to the business. I think that, there's really no secret sauce when it comes to business. There's really just experience and mistakes that you learn and all that stuff. And, I'm always happy to share that knowledge with anybody who wants to take the time to learn. So.
Very generous of you. Thank you. Josh, how about you?
If anybody wants to know how to support their local favorite restaurant, I think the best possible thing they can do is call their local favorite restaurant and ask them how they would like to be supported.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty straightforward one. To kind of mirror what everybody else is saying, restaurants are part of communities. When we treat restaurants as part of a community, the community thrives, the restaurant thrives. It's a place for gatherings, place for happiness, place for sorrow. But the best way to keep a restaurant part of a community is to treat it like part of the community and talk to the people who work there and own it and get feedback.
Nice. Jackie?
Well, I have nothing really more to add. Everybody said it already. My only short plug would be don't forget about the Quarry House when it reopens. Now I'm completely preoccupied with that. But yeah, be waiting with bated breath when they reopen fully.
I know that my husband frequents Quarry House, or did frequent Quarry House, so I'll make sure I send him back there the day it opens. Tim, any final words you'd like to share with us while I'm putting up a plug for our next webinars?
I just wondered if any of our restaurateurs sell gift cards. I know that's been one way that people have tried to get through this. And if so, please just mention it.
We do on all our websites.
We do on our website as well.
It's a great way to support a local restaurant. The money comes in, it's not immediately spent. So you give, it's like a membership almost in a restaurant.
Nice. Great.
Coming in for 1 minute, piggybacking on Eric's tip. Well, when you do carry out, it does go through directly to the staff, and we've seen honestly. So
yeah, absolutely. Tip your waiters, right? Tip your waiters and bartenders and cooks and everyone.
Yeah.
All right. I want to give a special thanks to all the panelists. Thank you, Tim, in particular, for putting in the work to pull everybody together. We really appreciate it. I'm going to reach out to each of you and see if I can get you some Maryland swag. And when I drop it off, I'll place my order ahead of time with my generous tip for all the good people who are staying there and letting me continue to eat great food. So really, really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to just mention the 2 webinars we have coming up. One which is about the PPP.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you so much, everybody. I'll definitely also be trying to carry out orders and everything like that. A good takeaway from today's webinar. But I just want to quickly introduce our next webinars that we planned for Maryland Business Rebooted. And so next week, we have our marketing professor, Jie Zhang, who will be kind of leading a session, interviewing, or actually she will have panelists coming in. So James Thompson from Box by Experts, and Catherine Cullen and Adam Lukowski from National Retail Federation. And they will talk specifically about how the retail business is moving along during this time of COVID-19. And so they'll talk about things like how to move your business online, especially for retail businesses, and talk a little bit more about the initiative that the NRF is actually working on. And then the PPP related webinar, we'll have that the week following that. And we have, again, as Judy mentioned, it's Michael Falkender's brainchild, apparently, PPP. And so he will be there to walk us through how to really understand this PPP program, along with Mindy Lehman, who's from the Maryland Bankers Association. And so both webinars, I think, will be really relevant for all of us, and really look forward to seeing all of you there. And thank you again, everybody, for attending, and see you next week.